together, you know, at one point. So,
all right, I'm going to take us live.
Oh, great. Good to see everybody. Danny, we can see the, we can't see the agenda anymore. We can only see the, there we go. We can see us on YouTube though. That's exciting. Great. Well, welcome to Land Use and Ethics. Great to see everybody this morning. We are just going to have a discussion of some of these bills and walk through them so that everybody understands them, but no voting today. So the first bill we're going to go over is HB 59, Delegate Carr's bill that has to do with registering lobbyists and local governments. Patrick, there were some amendments. I know we sent them around. Do you want to walk through that bill for us?
Yeah, the bill itself requires that the lobbying provisions for states and municipalities be at least require people who are compensated and people who give tips to register as lobbyists jurisdiction as long as they're not exempted.
That's all right, we'll find out.
The amendment actually includes all lobbying, including things like procurement and business grants and loans and things like that. So it expands that, and it takes out the repeal of the substantially similar standard requirement. Local laws to be substantially similar. So with respect to lobbying, it would make the Model A and the Model B the same. And Jennifer, if I misspoke or left something out, you know.
No. Hi, good morning, everybody. This is,
morning.
I'm Jennifer Alger. I'm the Executive Director from the State Ethics Commission, and thanks for the invitation today. Hopefully I can clarify any questions. You know, Patrick's summary is correct. It seems that Delegate Carr's bill really just includes the, expands the lobbying registration triggers that a local government would be required to include in their local ethics laws. And that would be all counties and then the municipalities that are required to have lobbying provisions in their ethics law. So it's not all municipalities, but it's a lot of the larger ones. Can provide a list if anyone's interested in knowing which ones are specifically affected.
Great. Delegate Holmes has a question or comment.
Yeah, so you indicated it's not all local governments, just larger ones. I don't, and I'm looking at the bill, perhaps that distinguishment is in the amendment. So what determines larger versus smaller, and why is there a differentiation between the two? And number two, does this include MACO MML?
Okay. Patrick, do you want me to take that?
I'll go ahead and you can correct anything I say wrong. MACO represent the local jurisdictions. They aren't government agencies.
Right.
So they are not lobbied. So no, they are not covered. Their clients are covered, certainly, except for the exempted municipalities, as Jen said. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons why, you know, smaller jurisdictions, like if you think back to our financial disclosure discussions, we talked about how, you know, if you're a smaller jurisdiction with a very small budget, if you have no zoning authority, things like that, then there's really no reason to have financial disclosure. There's not a lot of incentive for corruption. Whereas other, obviously, larger jurisdictions with zoning and planning and all of that, you know, that's where you want the ethics laws to apply. Now, that's a reason for exemption. Lobbying, again, you know, if you're talking about small budgets and the like, and not a whole ton of activity, then there could be any number of reasons why you'd want to exempt smaller jurisdictions. And Jen, do you have anything to add to that, especially with respect to lobbying, why we might exempt a smaller jurisdiction?
Right. No, it's the State Ethics Commission that does the review and grants the smaller jurisdictions the exemption from the requirement to have lobbying provisions as part of their local ethics law. It's thinking of small places like Smithsburg is one that has an exemption, Berwyn Heights, I think Elkton, compared to some of the larger places. Annapolis has one, Aberdeen has one, Chestertown has to have lobbying provisions. And as Patrick said, it's really based on a number of factors. And it's the government function of the jurisdiction, the population, the size of their budget, the different powers that local government carries out.
Okay. I don't know that smaller ones are less likely to be corrupt than larger ones. But that's just my 2 cents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Only takes one bad apple, right? Only takes one person.
Yes.
Understood. Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick questions. Now, we were just talking about municipalities, but this would include counties too, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I guess my couple questions that pops into my mind. One of the other things that was said that anybody that was being paid to lobby or try to work with, say, local governments to get something approved, say, how about a homeowners association where you have a manager who's being paid and they're also being paid to lobby boards of county commissioners or council people to allow them to become a municipality or to extend a road tax district or to annex part of their private community into the county. Would they be considered a lobbyist? And if that's the case, would they have to be registered?
It's all fact specific. There's the law spells out who is a lobbyist. I'd have to take your example and look through the code and see if it fits any of the how much they get paid. Because if you're paid a pittance, then you're not considered a lobbyist.
If you're paid what?
If you're paid a pittance, there are levels where and time frames where you go and you're considered a lobbyist. And then, of course, there are exemptions too, for representation of certain entities. Really all fact specific.
So we would have to leave that up to the individual.
If they're getting paid,
huh?
it depends on how much they're getting paid, who they're representing, and what capacity. There's all sorts of exemptions and pay levels and time periods and the like.
And that's existing law, Delegate Clark.
Yes.
So it is up to people to register as lobbyists. Like they need to determine that they meet the requirements. And if somebody doesn't register as a lobbyist and they're sort of outed, then they pay fines. So that's existing law.
So what you're telling me is that groups or homeowners associations or organized groups that, as long as the person's not being paid, but they are lobbying local governments for certain types of, let's say, more rural zoning than commercial zoning, and they're just a organized ad hoc citizens group, and there's some folks that lead it. As long as they're not getting paid, they're not considered lobbyists. But yet, that group of people are probably more influential to the Board of County Commissioners as voters than they would ever be as a lobbyist that's getting paid.
It's true. Citizen lobbying is an important thing, right? When we have these people who are our constituents come tell us why they support bills, that they don't need to register. They're volunteers, with different organizations, but there are constituents.
I agree with you 100%. And I wanted to make sure we weren't going down that road to where we were going to have them
Right.
register. Okay, my next question has to do with people that lobby that are paid that lobby school boards. Why aren't school boards included in this? Because in most counties, one of the largest budgeted items is the school system. And they affect the spending of 50, 60% in some counties of the entire budget. So it seems like to me, if we're going down this route, that the school boards ought to be included in this bill for the same reason as municipalities and counties.
I think that sounds like a bill for you for next year, Delegate Clark.
Well, either that or an amendment to this one. Why do it twice when we can amend it and make it right, the bill right 100% the first time?
Delegate Carr, who is the sponsor, is here. I'm not sure if that was something he considered, but perhaps you and he could talk offline about that, and he could give you the genesis.
Well, I can tell from
the
the facial expressions that that may not be something that was thought of or wanted to get into. But to me, if we're going to do this and put this on the local counties, the counties need to set structure up, including your school board, because of the amount of funds that are spent by the school boards going forward. I mean that there's just as much room for corruption there as it is at local towns and local boards of county commissioners or councils.
Sure. Well, yeah, I encourage you and Delegate Carr to talk about it. And we're not going to vote on this today. So if that's something you all want to discuss, I think that's fair.
Thank you.
Danny, you want to pull up the agenda? Any other questions on that for now? And if not, we'll move on to the next bill. It looks like Delegate Love is trying to unmute. Go for it.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. I understand there's an amendment. Do we have that? Can we get it?
There is. You should have received it, but we will circulate it again. I have it in front of me. It strikes a piece of the bill that has to do with the model lobbying provisions. It's page 2 of the bill, lines 17 to 21, primarily. So yes, we will, and it adds a paragraph on the last page. So we will make sure you have that. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Great. The next bill was HB 120. This is Delegate Healy's bill about condemnation authority. This legislation has to do with MagLove, and it has to do with whether or not sort of private railroad, who can have condemnation authority under state law. I don't know if there are questions about this legislation. Delegate Clark, did you have a question, or is that from before?
Well, I do have a question.
Okay.
My question is, would this inhibited future innovation in transportation? I mean, it could be some other use of that type of technology that would be considered MagLove, that would be above the ground, or just an existing railroad lines that may need to be expanded, things like that. Or are we kind of cracking the whole egg and throwing the whole egg away with this legislation? That would be my concern.
Thank you for raising that. Delegate Stewart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for council. Would this apply also to the condemnation authority of public sector railroads, or is this a section of statute that only applies to private railroad companies?
This only applies to a railroad that's powered by a magnetic levitation propulsion system.
But could that be a public railroad that's powered by a magnetic levitation propulsion system?
I believe this condemnation authority is only for private railroads.
Okay. So I guess like this sort of.
I mean, the government would still have their condemnation authority.
We'll have like eminent domain authority. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions about that? Okay. Delegate Ruth, her bill also has an amendment, and I think she's working on further amendments with MDOT. I know she's been working on this really hard all year. This is the Equity in Transportation Sector Bill. It's about providing more equitable analyses. She also just submitted her letter of support from the Legislative Black Caucus. So we have that now as well in our files. Just wanted to start a review of this and get people's initial feedback, questions that you think we should take back to the sponsor or to MDOT. If folks are interested in, working on this with MDOT, let me know. But just wanted to see where people were and see what questions folks had before going down further roads on this, if you have any.
I have one, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Really interesting idea. I appreciate all the work that she's working on. I'm curious about the fiscal note and whether we have authority to go that high. I mean, I know we're in a budget surplus, but everybody knows we're in a budget surplus, so everybody's thinking this is great. So I just wondered where we were with the fiscal note.
Yep, nope, it's the question, I think. So my understanding is that she's working with MDOT on an amendment. We have one amendment, but we have one amended version, but I'm not sure it's the final one. So she's working with MDOT, and then my ask of MDOT, well, I will ask them to rescore the bill to basically give us a letter. Like, we won't probably be able to get a new fiscal note, but if MDOT is able to assert that in a letter to us that the reasons for the high fiscal note were allayed or lessened, then we may be able to work with the Appropriations Committee and the subcommittee chair, Delegate Corman, and others to talk through how this would work and the fiscal note. So yep, that's the question right now, I think. Delegate Clark?
Just a quick question for council. How would this bill affect the quality of transportation projects from suburban projects as opposed to rural projects, where you have a large difference in population and diversity of the population as far as their ability to be prioritized, the ones in the rural areas to be prioritized by Department of Transportation in the future, where you may have a prime example is Solomon, where we're going to need a new bridge eventually. How will that be prioritized as opposed to, say, something like the Red Line in Baltimore, which is probably funded through to the other part of the Department of Transportation because it's a revenue generating project, or increase in lanes on 270 or Route 50 going to Ocean City. How would the lesser populated areas be able to put their get their projects moving if we have this in there? Equality.
I don't think this bill has anything to do with priorities. This bill takes a look at the individual projects and says you have to consider equity, to use a broad term here. And if there are problems with certain populations or low income versus high income people, then you have to look at other alternatives and check all other alternatives, use the best one, but you have to take that into consideration. It's all within a single project. It's not project versus project. So I don't think this has anything to do with priorities.
Well, I understand that part, but could it, when it's said and done and on the books, could it be used that way to where, it could be, one project could be used against another?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, this is about, like if they're changing bus lines, they would look, and the administration's planning to change bus lines, like within the bus system, within the MTA bus system, what will the effects be on different populations within the bus, the area that's, to do. So I'm
And
just
what
not.
other alternatives are there?
Yeah. I don't think it's not like the previous scoring legislation. It's very different than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about it so far? Okay, let's finish up then with Delegate Ampre's bill on environmental reports. Let's see, or this is the food district. So this is a bill that has to do with food deserts and producing reports by legislative district on food deserts. This was a bill that came last year. We tried to work on it. We ended up not being able to pass it because of the fiscal note. I think the concept is important and would love and welcome thoughts and ideas from members of the committee on how to get this to a place where we can pass something. So totally open for ideas. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, one thing I was thinking about to try to get the fiscal note down, and I think, the intent behind this is great. And I think I remember, Delegate Ampre showing the committee Baltimore City's maps, and they're very pretty and it's very cool. And I certainly would love to have that for my own district about food scarcity. But when you look at other maps that exist from other nonprofit groups, it becomes pretty apparent that there are large swaths of the state that have no food scarcity, including, in Montgomery County, there are multiple legislative districts that do not have any food scarcity. There are a couple that do, but there are mostly do not. So I was wondering, since this is a report that's due every other year, maybe one way to get the fiscal note down at least a little bit would be to have a threshold determination based on other data about which counties or which districts actually have some, using some sort of metric widely available. All the different agencies tasked with producing these reports could first say, okay, only if you're above certain threshold of, grocery stores per capita or, whatever, fresh foods per capita, only if you're under that are we going to report a state legislative map for you. Or you could do it on the county level. You could say only counties that are at a certain level of food scarcity are we going to break it down by state legislative district for each one. Now, I hesitate to share that that idea because I'm sure that it means that my county will probably get fewer reports when I would love more reports. But in the interest of trying to get the bill out in any form, that seems like an obvious way to bring the fiscal note down.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I also wonder, one of my thoughts is whether legislative districts are the right way to do this, just because there may not be a grocery store that's on my corner, but across the street, there's a grocery store, but that's in a different legislative district. So, I just wonder if like county or regional, so that you can drill down, but also it's hard. Political lines are very, they have nothing to do with where these establishments exist. So I just, and maybe that would create fewer reports, which would be bring the fiscal note down as well. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also right. Like when I was looking at Montgomery County's map up, using some other website, there was a lot of food scarcity in the Wheaton area of Montgomery County, but it was all concentrated in District 18, even though there were multiple other districts that were right in that same area and probably had some of the same issues, but because of just like the weird, the idiosyncrasies of how the maps are drawn, they would have probably, their legislative district report would have come out, probably substantially different if it was based on it. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Delegate Clark.
Just for clarity, the maps, and you say they're based on could be based on districts. Are they based on distances between, say, grocery stores, or are they based on square footage of grocery stores per the population? Just how are these going to be set up, and how is this study going to be done?
Sure. So the reports in the bill, it identifies what would be in the report. So as it is in the legislation, it says the reports required would include metrics that determine food insecurity zones, metrics that identify the health food availability index, the number of grocery stores and supermarkets offering fresh food in each county and in each legislative district, the number of SNAP and WIC recipients, which stores accept purchases made with SNAP and WIC. So there's a number of different factors that that he requests in the legislation.
Yeah, so my next question would be in districts, say like my district, runs from the middle of Calvert County all the way down to Piney Point, which is, a long distance.
Sure.
So when you figure in my district, maybe there's 2 or 3 grocery stores in my district.
Right.
Okay. And people in the rural areas are used to driving 10 miles to go to the grocery store.
Sure, it's
For
different.
longer distance. So if you're looking to bring down the fiscal note, I'm not sure, do we need to go out in every county to do this? Because obviously when you come to Calvert and St. Mary's County, there's really not what you would consider to be food deserts. There's tons of grocery stores, probably more than what we need.
Right. Well, I
okay.
think there are in other rural areas though. Like I know in Charles County, there's real concern about the lack of grocery stores in the Indian Head area and the Bryans Road area, like once you get out of Waldorf and La Plata. So that may be true for some areas, and maybe like Delegate Stewart said, this isn't something that's necessary for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree with Delegate Stewart, because in Indian Head and Bryant and that on Indian Head Road, you come up a little bit farther in Prince George's County, and there's quite an abundance of grocery stores just a little bit farther up the road. So
okay,
thank you.
Great. Delegate Stewart.
Sorry, last thing, just in response to Delegate Clark, I actually pulled back up, which I'm happy to share this link. This is from the Economic Research Service at the USDA. They have a food access research atlas, like map. And I just wanted to note that Delegate Clark, actually, I don't know how this will change your view on this one way or another, but actually Solomon's is on this map is light green, which basically means like the very lowest level of, barely food insecure, basically. So that may inform, if you don't think there's a problem, that could inform your view of how they're computing this. I'm not, making one, obviously, your district better than anyone. I'm not making any statement one way or another, but Solomon's actually is included in this, is sort of like vaguely insecure. And then in terms of rural areas, generally, the ones that have the most insecurity per the map appear to be basically on the kind of the mid shore and in Western Maryland. But overall, your point about Southern Maryland not having much of an issue is accurate as a region.
Well, I mean, as far as Solomon's, I mean, there's a grocery store right in the middle of Solomon's, and then either way you go, across the bridge or up the road within 2-3 miles, there's abundance of retail grocery stores: Harris Teeter's, Giants, BJ's. To the north, you got Giant Food and Weiss. We have 2 Weiss within 2 miles of each other. So I would say that's probably not, if you just say Solomon's is one thing, but you got to go Solomon's Lusby, which is right there next to each other. But don't worry, we'll make sure your father got plenty of friends.
My dad has moved down there, so I'm looking out for him. Jerry is too.
We'll go over and get it from the Amish and bring it to him.
There you go.
And just one more point, Madam Chair, and then I'll shut up about this one. But one thought I had is just, maybe we can talk to the sponsor, but about sort of who is the intended audience for the maps, right? I think that the state legislative district thing, probably the audience was us, because we're really the only people who care about that. And I get the logic of that. If we see that and we see other legislators' maps, we will be sprung to action, theoretically, to address food scarcity. So I get that rationale. So I think that if we want, in whatever way we create the map to reduce the fiscal note, we need to make sure that it's somehow accessible and easy for us, because I think that we're probably the intended
and that it's useful
audience. I just don't know how realistic it is that regular folks are going to be going on some sort of General Assembly website and accessing this. And if they do, they probably already know it's an issue in their district. So, they're going to see the map that says they don't have any fresh food nearby, and they're going to be like, yeah, well, duh.
we want it to actually be useful for sure. Delegate Holmes will have the last word on this. And then I
Thank you,
promised
Madam
people
Chair.
I'd get them out at 9:30.
All right, yeah, I know that we're talking about the fiscal note, and we're also talking about maps. And the largest portion of the fiscal note is the $500,000 for contractual services, for developing the data. Was there some discussion during the testimony to have or pull this available information from other sources that are already here? That way, it was significantly, in my opinion, reduce that fiscal note of $500,000. Like Delegate Stewart says, he just pulled something up, and we've got to be able to figure out where that data is coming from and how to incorporate it without making it cost $500,000. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point. And there should be ways to bring the fiscal note down. Yeah. Well, great. This was a really good discussion of these bills. Thank you so much. Keep your eyes out for, I don't know if we'll vote next week or the week after on legislation and go over new bills as well. We'll keep you informed on which bills are coming to our subcommittee too, so you can keep up with those. But thank you all. Great to see you, and see you at 1 o'clock. Take care. Bye.